I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I will welcome everybody and I'd like a motion to enter into an open session of the budget committee. Going below and a second, Ms. Brunel, and all in favor. Thank you very much. We're in budget. Ms. Fields, would you like to begin?
I would be very happy to begin. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And for those of you who are watching at home, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to email them to communications@nccs-k12.org. We'll be monitoring that account all night, and when it comes time for questions, if you have any, they will be read aloud, and we will do our very best to answer. As you know, this is the last meeting of our first cycle of budget presentations, and we always talk about mission-focused budgeting, that all our decisions, all our plans for a budget are related to our mission, which has two parts. The first part asking that all students are given the opportunity and support to engage in relevant and challenging work which contributes to their academic and social growth and development. We want to develop the whole child, and we have always had that as a main part of our mission. And that all of the adults who work here are part of a learning community. We have to constantly learn and evolve so that we're best meeting the needs of our students, so that we can provide a high quality, relevant, equitable education for all. We do this work through our three pillars that you've come to know, which is our shorthand: academic excellence, equity, and social emotional health. So we look at any new program requests, staffing requests, or proposals through the lens of our pillars. So you'll remember, if you've been at the previous meetings, that tonight is a big night because it's two meetings in one. Because of the early break week, we would have had another meeting next week. We don't have it, so we have, I'm giving you this as a caveat before I hit the slide to show you the agenda, because it's long. But I'm going to go fast. So we have enrollment tonight, we have new program proposals, we have staffing requests. That would have been one meeting. And then the next meeting would have been where we go over all the schedules, so all the staffing changes, equipment, maintenance projects, interfund transfers, new programs and initiatives, a summary, and then we go through revenues, expenditures, the tax cap, and the budget summary, and the meeting schedule, and the board tonight will vote on the proposed budget. So let's start with enrollment updates and projections. So one of the things I've been looking at is the growth in enrollment. We've all been looking at the growth of enrollment in this district over the last decade. Over the last decade, as North Colony has added students, you may know that New York State as a whole has been losing students. So public school enrollment in New York State over the last decade has actually declined by 9%. For K through 12 students, you hear that, right? You hear people leaving New York State. That is not true necessarily of our area. It's certainly not true of North Colony. So the first thing I think is a very interesting slide is to compare our enrollment to our neighbors in this area. It's one thing to compare to New York State, which is massive, but to our area. So you can see from the 2013-14 school year, where as a district we had 5,347 students, through now, there's an asterisk on North Colony. All the other data I pulled from the state ed website. So every other district is their 22-23 enrollment. This is our current enrollment. So we are currently at 6,185 students. That is an increase of 838 students. That is an increase of 16%. So while the state as a whole has lost 9%, we have gained 16%. Our neighbors in Niskayuna have gone up by 188 students, and Niskayuna School District has gone up by 5%. Every other local district has had a decline in enrollment. So if you look, Bethlehem has lost 632 students for a decline of 13% of their overall enrollment. Saratoga Springs, the city school district, has lost 616, they're down by 9%. We're now bigger than a city school district, we're bigger than the city of Troy, we're bigger than the city of Saratoga. So we are a very big school district in this region. Schenectady is the biggest, Albany is the second, Shenandoah is the third, North Colony is the fourth. So we are a very big district in the region. Ballston Spa, I put Ballston Spa in there even though they were always a little bit smaller, but people hear Global Foundries, Ballston Spa, Global Foundries, so we expect the growth there. They also have had a decline of 309 students, they're down by 7%. Shen is down 346 students by 4%. Burnt Hills is down 98.3%. South Colony is down by 2%, let's pretty much call that even, and Guilderland is down by 72 students, about 1%. So as we look at our budget and as we think about how we balance a budget, I think it's really important to know this growth in enrollment means that we have been adding staff almost every year for the last decade because we have to. So for example, in some districts where enrollment is declining, not because of budget problems, but as enrollment declines, and people retire, they don't always replace those positions because they don't have the need for it anymore because their numbers have gone down. That has never been something that we can really take advantage of. That attrition does not work because if we had a second grade teacher retired, we absolutely need to replace them because our numbers continue to grow. And we are forecasted to grow beyond the number that we're at right now. It's also interesting to think about, well, where is this growth of enrollment coming from? Who's coming into the district? So if we look back in 2013, 5,347 students, we're now at 6,185. In 2013, 75% of our student population was white. Today it's 55%. 13% of our population was Asian or Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. Now that's 23%. 5% of our students were Black or African American. Now that's 8%. 4% were Hispanic or Latino, that's now 7%. 3% were multiracial, that's now 6%. 0% were homeless, now that's 3%. I don't know that it was ever 0, it's just that the number was so small that the state wouldn't record it. 14% were eligible for free and reduced lunch, that's now 29%. 3% were limited English proficient, and I've updated that with this year's total, so this is different on the slide than what the board has in front of them. That number is now 9%. So we've gone from 3% to 9%. And for our students with disabilities, we were at 14%, we are now at 15%. So we can all do the math in our head, I know, but I think it's worth taking a moment to realize that when we have 3% of our students who are homeless, that is 186 students. That is 186 students who have housing insecurity within our district. When we look at 29% of our students being eligible for free or reduced lunch, now we know we have free meals for all, but these are the people who would have qualified if we didn't have free for all. That is 1,793 students. 1,793 students who are coming with families who are relying on the district for breakfast, for lunch. And when we look at 9% limited English proficient, that is 552 students. I do not use that title, limited English proficient. That is a state ed title. I would like to say these are our multilingual learners. They have many strengths that they bring, but that is the state classification. So we have a population, and we've talked about this, where when you look at our budget and you look at some of our requests, they are tied to our growth in enrollment and our particular student needs. Okay, so this is my favorite chart. You all love this. This is where we are in terms of cohort projections for next year. You will remember, if you've been a part of our budget process before, that Dr. McGibbon is a demographer who literally has a doctorate in demography. He's been doing our projections since 2014. He is amazingly accurate. When I look back at his original projections for us, and I looked 8 years later, he was off by 8 students over 8 years. So we've asked him to redo the projections. He redid them just in the spring of last year. So this is based on his projections and then my work. So what we do is, if you look, obviously on the left-hand side, those are the grades. Current 23-24, that's as of 2 weeks ago. That's our actual enrollment right now as of 2 weeks ago in each of those grades. So rollover means, if you look, for example, right now in kindergarten, there's 366 students. If I roll them into first grade next year and assume nobody else moves in, we would have 366 first graders. 392 first graders become 392 second graders. We obviously know that is not the case. We don't have a place where no students are moving in. So then what I do is I look at what McGibbon had for 23-24, and I look at what McGibbon projected for 24-25, and I call that the growth factor. So I say, okay, what was he saying? What was he projecting? And then the growth factor gets added to the actual number of students in front of us. So he may have had a slightly different number, but I can look at what he projected the growth of a certain cohort would be as they grew up from first to second or second to third. And I take that number and I apply it to the current students in front of us to get our projections. So the one thing that is starred on there you'll see is kindergarten. So right now, if you see the number 393, that is what he was projecting for the 24-25 kindergarten. But if you take a moment and look at kindergarten, McGibbon 23-24, he was projecting 389. As of today, with the year 3/4 of the way over, we actually only have 366 kindergarten students. So it's the one place where he was very much over in terms of his projections. So I actually think his projection of 393 is way too high, to be honest with you. So what I did was I looked at what did he project for this year. He was over by 23. So I took his projection of 393, I subtracted the 23 that he was over, and that's how I got to the 370 number. I want to say, I still think that number's way too high. So right now, with our current registration, our process has been open since the beginning of the new year, we have 267 students who are registered for kindergarten, currently. Families have filled out the online paperwork. We know, because of our student database, that we have 37 students who are kindergarten eligible next year who already have siblings in our elementary schools. So it's a pretty good indicator if their siblings are already here that those 37 will come to North Colony. So if we take 267 that we have plus the 37 who have siblings, that gets us to 304. With everything we know about the birth data, the county census, all that information, and on our radar, we have 350 kids. Now, we don't always get all the kids who are kindergarten eligible to come to North Colony. They go to private schools, they go to different places. So somewhere between 304, which I think is a very realistic number, and 350 is probably the number. I'm sticking with McGibbon. We can talk about it next year and see how far off we were, but I do think that 370 for kindergarten is inflated. The other thing I would like to bring up is, back when we were considering the first building project, Dr. McGibbon advised us not to build an additional elementary school because his projections were such, he said we would not be in a position where we would be losing enrollment, but he did think we would plateau and level out. And he thought that if we did increase and we did build an additional elementary school, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we would have overbuilt. So that was one of the decisions. It was also an equity factor. Somebody would get a brand new building. That was one of the reasons we decided to make the elementaries K-5 and make this building 6-8. Now, that was back, he was doing those projections for us, like I said, in 2014. 10 years later, if you look, you can see a little bit of that coming true, because if we go up to 5th grade, our projection for next year for our 5th graders is 475, but our first grade class is projected at 390. Our kindergarten, which I think is inflated, is projected at 370. I think it's likely about 350. So that leveling off he was starting to talk about, you will see our primary elementary grades are smaller than our intermediate elementary grades. And as you watch the middle school and the high school, what you will see is the bubble that was once in our elementary school, which is what caused us to have to be 4 deep in certain buildings as we were building Bout Hills, that has now hit the middle school and is now on its way to the high school. so if we look at our secondary, same exact system, take our current, roll it over, get the growth factor, add it up, see where we land. So again, you can see we have 477, so we were at 370, we got up to 475 by 5th grade, by 6th grade we're at 477, 7th grade 519, 8th grade 503. Now here comes the big one, the freshman class is projected to be 578 students. That will be our largest freshman class. He had a very big projection for the current year, it came true. So why do you see such a jump of 60? Because that includes, he's aware that in 9th grade we get students from the NANS every year, so he's analyzed how many NANS students typically come in. We get students from private schools who've been in private school K-8 who come to us from 9th grade. So his projections for that level have been remarkably consistent. And what you can see is, and where this will end up, is if you look at 11th grade and 12th grade at 510, 515, those are suddenly looking like smaller classes. And there was a time when we barely had 1,900 kids in the high school. So as they graduate out, and as the 8th grade 503 comes up and they get another 60 kids, you're going to be having classes at the high school where each grade is about 575 kids, which is also fueling the capital project because we're obviously not built for a high school that is this big. So where does that land us? That lands us with our elementary currently at 2,594 across all the buildings, dropping down to 2,566, so that's a loss of 28 students. But remember, that's with that inflated kindergarten number. If I'm right and that number is high, I would guess that our elementary enrollment will probably be down by about 50 students. The middle school is projected to be down 15 students. Let's just call that even because that's very close to even. And you start to see that bubble, it's not quite there, but it's certainly hitting 9th grade of 87 additional students at the high school. So for next year, the overall district projection is to move to 6229. That would be an additional 44 students. We did see more growth this year than was anticipated, so whether that continues and we're a little above his projections, we'll see. But we continue to grow as a district, and we continue to have to budget for that growth in enrollment. So with that, you will remember that one of our pillars is that we are a learning organization and that we are constantly engaging in thinking and study so that we can provide a high quality, relevant education for all. Part of that work is thinking about how are we best meeting our students' needs, and are we clear in thinking about what is the next best thing we can offer. And so as we look to the future, we do have some new program proposals for right now. The first one that we're really excited about, it came up last year as the high school was thinking about planning for a new schedule, is a freshman seminar. You just saw the number of freshmen who are coming in. Freshmen come in, they're 9th graders, they're all over the place, they're 13 or 14 years old, they have a lot of energy, which when channeled well is an exciting thing, but they need a lot of guidance to make the transition to a very big high school. So the freshman seminar will actually serve all of our freshmen. So this is not reserved for any particular subset. It's all 9th graders will have time in their schedule. Consider it like an advisory time, if you will, to build connections and to start to think about what are your goals for high school? What is it you want to achieve? What are the possibilities? How do I make friends? How do I find out about clubs and activities? We know the more connected kids are to school, the better they do. We know that they're safer when they're in our buildings than when they're out on their own. So it will focus on many different things: social emotional literacy, talking about responsible decision making, relationship skills, social awareness, community circles, restorative practices, when we make mistakes, how do we improve and grow? Executive management, kind of a fancy title for organization. You know, if you see a 9th grader's book bag sometimes, it's really a scary place. So how do we help them to balance all these classes that they have, plus their other responsibilities? Disciplinary preparation in terms of, you know, they're going to be exposed to so many different kinds of courses, so many electives, and I always liken it to when you think about going to a library or going to a small bookstore. I love reading, I love books. Sometimes I can get overwhelmed in a library because there are so many choices that I almost prefer to go to a smaller bookstore where it's curated a little bit more for me. Our kids are going from a middle school where they had some choices to a high school where we're really fortunate to have so many choices, but that can be overwhelming for kids because they start to make decisions. So we can use this time to help them start to think about what are the careers you're interested in? What are the kinds of credentials you would need for those careers? How do we help build these individual plans for you to be successful in whatever way you want to be successful? And then how do we connect you to all the opportunities we have at Shaker High School? If we build it, they will come, but sometimes we have to get them in the right direction, and it takes a gentle nudge. So all of this freshman seminar, this will be a new teaching position that will be added in, and it will be rotated in their schedule, maybe opposite of PE or opposite of lab, but it will fit in so that all of our students can benefit from this. We know, on top of just our experience, we also know what the research says. Freshman year, the transition years, kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade. If they have successful initial years in buildings, they tend to be very successful throughout. So we're really putting some energy into that big freshman class. That's very exciting. This is exciting. So you know that, or you may not know this. This is something that I pay attention to. So right now in New York State, there is a huge percentage of teachers who are in the next 5 to 10 years going to get to retirement age and start to retire. That is true across New York State. It is true in North Colony. And we also know that since the pandemic, the number of students in New York State who are in teacher preparation programs has declined. So we are in this position that is challenging. We're going to need more teachers because teachers are retiring, and for a district such as ours where we're going to continue to need to add teachers, and we have fewer teachers in the pipeline from our colleges. So one of the things we've been talking about for a long time is how do we get our own students here interested in the teaching profession, which I think is an amazing profession, and I'm happy I dedicated my life to it. So we're going to add a new elective, which can count for their English credit as a senior elective, because it will have reading and writing and it will meet the state's requirements, called Take a Look at Teaching. And it will be a course that students can take as seniors as an elective. They will have the ability to learn about teaching as a profession. They'll read and write about teaching, probably interview some teachers. But this is the really interesting piece. In this course, we can get kids ready that in the spring of 2025, they can actually sit for a level 1 teaching assistant certification. So that next summer, when we are running our extended school year program and we need some teacher assistants, some of our very students who haven't yet gone off to college could actually start working as teacher assistants in some of our summer programs. So this is something really interesting. It sets them apart. It's something great that they could have on a resume. And again, as we start to think about what's relevant and interesting, that's not going to be of every kid's interest, and that's okay. But it probably will be for a lot of kids, and this is something we haven't been able to offer before. We have people on the board who have been teachers. We have people obviously in this room, and so to help shepherd in the next generation of teachers through a course like this is something really exciting. We're going to eliminate one under-enrolled elective and replace it with this, so it doesn't require any new staffing. It's just, again, looking at the data, who's taking what classes, what's the next best interesting idea, and this is a great example of that. Okay, so we have, as we have expanded in our enrollment, we have expanded our number of student athletes. So over that last decade, when I was giving you some statistics, we have added 18 new interscholastic athletic teams in the last decade. So we are serving more children. We have more student athletes than ever before. We offer 98 interscholastic athletic teams, averaging 750 to 1,000 student athletes every season, and we host over 1,400 contests a year. So what is an athletic trainer? An athletic trainer is somebody who has certification, so if a student athlete is injured during a game, if something happens, they have a level of certification. They're the people, when you watch sports on TV, who run out and check on the kid and help the kid and assist the kid. Right now, we have in our NCTA contract, we have a stipended position for somebody who works 15 to 20 hours a week. That barely serves our students. So what happens is about 5 to 8 hours a week of games are actually covered with an athletic trainer present. If an athletic trainer isn't present, who's present? Obviously the coach, they're CPR certified, they're AED certified. We have some first aid providers who have first aid certification, but we're talking about the kid who, has their shoulder pops out or their ankle pops out. We're talking about people who have that level who can help the kid immediately before EMS gets there. And in addition to that, and this is a really big piece for us, safety when it happens, but also equity, is that person can then have office hours. So if our students who are busy and their families are busy and they need to work with someone on an injury and improve and get healthy, they can work with the athletic trainer right at Shaker High School. It's not dissimilar to having a nurse in the high school. There's somebody there who can work with the student and help them to get healthy so that they don't have to worry about leaving school to go to an appointment or their families are trying to arrange that. I will tell you this, you saw our numbers earlier in the Suburban Council. We are the only Suburban Council district that does not have an athletic trainer. We're the only one that does not have an athletic trainer. What that sometimes means is when we want to host bigger competitions here, which is great for the school district, great for the energy of the program, we have to be able to say, well, we have an athletic trainer here because we're hosting this competition. We often can't do that. So we will call Shen and say, can we have your athletic trainer? We want to host this program. We'll pay your person to come to our district so we can host this. And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no, they're working with our kids over here. So we can't offer the fullness of our program, and this is really for the safety and well-being of our student athletes. As these numbers have increased, this is really a position we need. So you know that New York State is preparing the Blue Ribbon Commission, and in preparation for that, over the last couple of years, they started to open the door a little bit on pathways, not as much as I think they will once the Blue Ribbon recommendations are finally out. But there is a new pathway called as you can see, the Individual Arts Assessment Pathway. And this is an option for students right now in high school where they go through a 3-unit sequence in the arts and through a collection of work, so some kind of portfolio, they show growth over time, and they are able to show that they have achieved a level. It's kind of like a different way of thinking about a Regents exam in math, right? You take math, you take a Regents exam, you show that you've successfully mastered the content. The state is saying, well, wait a minute, let's look at what kids can do in the arts. They're every bit as valuable as math or science classes where we have Regents programs. What if we come up with some individual courses and assessments that they can show we've mastered this content or we've shown growth? We have a tremendous music and art program, as many of you know. However, as you've seen, we have a significant number of students who join us as 9th graders. We have a lot of kids who start here in kindergarten and stay right through 12th grade, but we also have a number of students who come to us in high school who are interested in music in different ways. They might be interested in music technology. They might be interested in production of music. They may not be playing an instrument, but they may be really savvy about the technology that is involved in music production. That's a really great career field for them. So as we think about this, we're going to ask for an additional .2 teacher because we'd like to open a new course called Guitar/Songwriting. Mr. Barden, by the way, Mr. Barden wants to audit this course, just so you know. So that for those kids who are maybe more interested in music but in a less traditional way, like they haven't been in band since the 4th grade, they haven't been in orchestra since the 4th grade, but they'd like to get into it, and they'd like to maybe get to this credit where they can get the certification with the arts assessment pathway. This will give them one more option, and when we talk about equitable options, as kids come in new, this is a great entry into our music program. So that would be a point 2. This Director of Health and Safety, you know, it comes as no surprise to anyone in the audience that we live in challenging times. It's just the truth. And we have no greater responsibility as a school district than to the health and safety of our students and taking care of them when they're with us. And so we have had a supervisor of nursing for the last several years. Obviously, we saw during COVID how that was so important, tracking down all the cases and the contact tracing and all the things we had to do during COVID. And that has been a 0.6 administrative position, so a part-time administrative position. The person who is in that role last year joined us in the Student Support Center. If you were a part of our conversations for budget last year, you'll remember that we brought on a new Student Support Center at the high school. And because it was a new program, newly defined, we decided it could use additional supervision beyond the high school admin team for the first year to get it up and running. I'm really happy to report that we've had a very successful first year with the Student Support Center. We have plans to grow it for next year. The person who is in this role has done a great job in connecting the people who are in the Student Support Center with all of the teams at the high school and working through the processes and protocols. This program exists under Pupil Services, under Casey Barden. So what we're going to do is, the program is running so well, it does not need somebody in there for .4 every day. It does need Casey to oversee it. It does need connection with Mr. Buccioni and his team at the high school, but it doesn't need somebody there every day for .4, almost half a day, because of the other people who are working in there. They're so well qualified. What we do have are increasing safety concerns, not just in North Colony, in everywhere. You hear it in the news. It's the one thing we all think about. It's the one thing we all worry about. So this year we brought in a company called Needham, who works all throughout the state on safety planning, not just for schools, but for all kinds of organizations, to come in, to work with us, to look at our buildings, to look at areas where we're in need. Everything from how well we are doing chemical storage to how well are we doing with making sure that people who should not be getting into the building are getting into the building. So everything that you could think of that could fall under the title of safety. How well are our safety drills planned? How well are we in alignment in checking people's credentials when they come into a building? So they've been doing some work with us, and there are areas where we can improve. There are areas where all school districts can improve. They've given us some great suggestions. It seems to me, to be honest, as we get to be a district of this size, a position that is overdue. That we have an individual, obviously health, when we look at what our nurses are dealing with, when we look at, unfortunately, you know, the proliferation of materials that are available to students, whether it's vaping, whether it's edibles, those are all safety concerns for our individual students. These two positions really mesh together. And so to me, to say this should be a 1.0 health and safety position to ensure that we're doing everything possible and we are as proactive as possible with our state planning, with our planning with the Colony Police, with our planning with Colony Emergency Services. We want to be as seamless as possible, and as we say, we always hope this is the training that we never need, but we want to know that we have it and we have it in place. So moving this from a supervisor to a director, that's not just a title change. We would like it to go beyond a 10-month position into an 11-month position, because when we do that work with the Colony Police, when they come to check on our buildings, we do a lot of that work in the summer. They go around the outside of the building, they check the windows. When we're working with the Colony Emergency Services, they're looking for the fire rescue windows. That's a lot of work we do in the summer, so it makes sense to have this position here in the summer and not have it just be extra days that someone is trying to fit into a schedule. So this position would obviously coordinate all nursing services, which is, helping people with physical requirements, vaccination requirements, any medication, as well as our district safety planning. So they would be a liaison to Needham Risk Associates, so they would work hand in hand with Brian Kraft. He is our director of facilities, so he works hand in hand with Needham when they're coming around and looking, are secure vestibules, are they secure enough, are our safety protocols, are our doors the right grade? He works on all that. This person would be on the instructional side, teamed together with Brian Kraft, working with Needham to help advise us and make sure we're doing everything we need to do. This person could coordinate our drills, our district readiness, our district trainings related to safety. We need to have annual trainings in all the buildings, coordinating all that work. De-escalation training, workplace violence, which is a new law that was just passed, coordinating that work. So a lot of this work has actually been under human resources, and that's great, and we've done a good job. But having someone who is overseeing that, so human resources can do other work in human resources, will be an exceptional addition. And so this is not a new FTE, this is not an addition to the budget, it's just a conversion, because we will no longer have the .4 supervisor in the Student Support Center. Instead, that would be the .4 supervision of safety. So it's still the same 1.0. This is a really exciting proposal, and I wish Mr. Bogert were here. I believe he's chaperoning something tonight. Mr. Bogert is our science supervisor. He has been working, and he is very close to getting a 3-year grant for this position. This position will only happen if we get the grant. So you may know, and hopefully you came to our Fall Family Festival. We're gonna have a spring one if you would like to come. More to come on that later. We have an unbelievable garden in the courtyard of Shaker High School. It has everything from flowers to fruits to vegetables to herbs. It even has peach trees. I didn't even know you could grow peaches in upstate New York, but apparently if you know what you're doing, you can, as well as like lettuce, tomato. Over the summer, we harvest all those, and we open 1 day a week over the summer. We make all the produce available to our community at no charge. People can come, it's advertised, they can come and get fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. Our students, all different kinds of students work on this Shaker Garden. We have a food science class, those students work on it. We have an AP environmental class, those students work on it. We have some of our students who are in special education classes, those students work in it. We've also added, there is a garden at Latham Ridge. There's a garden under construction for Loudonville. So our goal is to get these kinds of gardens in all of our elementary buildings, because we have to teach kids from an early age about the environment, about sustainability of food, of land. And we have, in Latham Ridge, the kindergartners are planting right alongside the 5th graders. It's an amazing thing to see. So the mission of this program would be that we are providing opportunities rooted in food equity that seek to nourish all students in order to support their physical and mental well-being. The overall goal is to educate all students toward a culturally and agriculturally diverse food system while promoting connections, family engagement, and community collaboration for a sustainable future. We already work with local farms. We work with local restaurants. One of the partnerships they had in the past with a food science class was they took ingredients out of the Shaker Garden. And then if you've seen any of these shows on kind of the Food Network, they had kids in the food science class in teams using the ingredients. Here's what you have this much time, make something, explain it. We had a local area chef who came as the judge. He tasted all and then decided on the winner. That restaurant then put the winning recipe on their menu, and the week that they featured it, every person who bought that, they took the entire amount that they paid for that dinner and gave it right back to the school program. So we have amazing partnerships. We work very closely with our food service department so that we're getting fresher and local ingredients to our kids. So when they're getting their breakfast, they're getting their lunch, they're getting fresh and local as in their backyard ingredients served to them. So this person, as the Shaker Garden coordinator, would do curriculum development to more formalize the process and coordination. They would serve as a liaison to special education classes, our LEP classes at the elementary level are working, science classes, our health classes talk about food and nutrition, our innovation labs, and our family and consumer science classes. Continuing community outreach, developing these community partnerships, which are so essential. We are the biggest employer in the town of Colony, and we need to be focused on serving our community, and this is an incredible way for us to serve our community. The maintenance and development of our Shaker Garden, which is a lot of work. It has full irrigation systems that one of the local farms has helped us to build so that we're not just dependent on whatever rain might come. And then all of the elementary gardens. So this proposal is very close. We actually thought we would have more information as of today as to whether or not we were getting the grant. Unfortunately, the person who is deciding on the grant had a health emergency, and so reached out and let us know that it won't be till after break that we know. But should we get this grant, the grant will fund the salary of this teacher for 3 years, so that teacher can work for 3 years, and this will come as no cost to the taxpayer, but a great benefit to our community and to our kids. So this is a really exciting project. We're very hopeful for this. It has just so many benefits. Okay, so those are our new programs. Obviously, some of our new programs have staffing requests. So our staffing requests this year are focused places where we have a need because of increasing enrollment. Obviously, you saw a lot of increasing enrollment at the middle school and high school levels. And then when we look at any new program proposals, we're looking at our 3 pillars. So when you think about something like the freshman seminar, that is about academic excellence. That is about equity because it serves all students. That is about their social emotional well-being so they can make a healthy transition to Shaker High School. So we're always looking at that. So as we just went over, these are the staffing requests as a result of new programs. So we have 1.0 freshman seminar teacher, 1.0 athletic trainer, 0.2 music, and then those last 2 are, the 1.0 is contingent upon the grant, and the 1.0 is repurposed. So for all intent and purposes, our new programs come at a cost of 2.2 staff members. When we look at our enrollment, you saw we went from 3% to 9% in terms of our students who speak languages other than English. So we are requesting two additional E&L teachers to serve somewhere throughout the district. We'll figure out the placement as our numbers come in. We need a 0.8 world language teacher. As these students get into the high school, into 9th grade, obviously they are all taking languages as part of their requirements. We need more sections. We are adding 1.2 special education teachers. You might think the 0.2 doesn't make sense. We do currently have a 0.8 special education teacher, so that 0.2 would make that person full-time, or that position, I should say, full-time, and then we would add an additional 1.0. We're adding a 1.0 social worker. As we talk about the changing need in the district, one of the things that we have is a McKinney-Vento liaison. And McKinney-Vento is the federal law which protects the rights of students who are experiencing homelessness. And we do a lot of work in this community to support our families in need, whether it is families who are experiencing homelessness, families who experience a tragedy like a fire, families who are just insecure with their food. You've heard a lot of those programs. This year, as we saw a lot of people move into the district, we had so many people in this district roll up their sleeves and want to help. It was actually the most positive thing. We had more donations to this district than we've ever had previously. We have had more book bags, winter coats when it became winter season, boots, backpacks. We have backpack programs so that kids don't go hungry every weekend or break. It exists all over the district. We had a lot of people trying to do that. And when you have a lot of people trying to do that, sometimes you get in each other's lane and you're not as efficient as you The other piece of it is we live in a great county, in Albany County. Albany County has so many resources to support families, but sometimes it takes a social worker who knows agency work, which is slightly different work than a counselor or psychologist, to say, I know the agency that can help this family. I know the agency that can help this person find temporary housing. And so this social worker would work district-wide, helping people to find those kinds of connections, and we're really looking for somebody who has that community agency background so that we can serve all of our students. Obviously, mental health needs continue to rise, so that will be part of their job, and then the other part of their job will be continuing to counsel our kids who are in need. Because, kids are under a lot of stress these days, and so having more mental health support is right in line with our mission. Point 2, speech pathologist, same situation. We currently have a .8 speech pathologist, so we're just asking to move that up to a full-time. 3, special education TAs. As our growth in enrollment happens, we have more and more specialized classrooms that have very clear requirements by New York State law. How many teachers, how many TAs, so we need 3 there. Point 4, technology. Again, when we think about the growth in enrollment hitting the middle school and high school, technology electives happen in the middle school and high school. We need more sections. We have so many kids who want to take a DDE and learn about engineering. That's a wonderful thing to have, so we need more staffing there. We need a point 2 social studies teacher. Again, we currently have a point 8. We're going to add a point 2 to bring that to a full-time social studies teacher. Same thing with science, we need an additional point 2. For PE and health, we need a point 8 that will be split between the middle school and high school. And again, these are all just driven by our enrollment numbers. And then point 1 music, point 1 art. You might look at that and think like, well, how do you get a point 1? What does that even mean? So a point 2 would be somebody who has a class every single day for a whole school year. So a point 1 is a period, but maybe you have it every other day, or it's a class that meets for a semester. And we are fortunate that currently we do have some part-time positions, so we would add this onto existing part-time, because again, you're not going to find a point 1 person out there in the world, but we would add to existing staffing. And then, again, as we look at safety, security, and the size of our buildings, especially at the middle school and high school, we'd like to add 2 more hall monitors to help with arrival, dismissal, after school times, to make sure our buildings are safe and secure. So that would have been the one meeting. So before we go on and go to what would have been next week's meeting, I'd like to stop and have any questions from the board, if there are any.
Yeah, I have a series of questions. When are we going to start looking at a new demographic study? Are we due for that?
We just got one last year.
Okay. So how far out are we projecting?
We are projecting out through 2032.
Okay. Not tonight, obviously, but can we look at those numbers
Sure.
in the future? Many of my other questions. The freshman seminar, is that going to be optional? Can students opt out, or are we highly encouraging everyone to do it? Are we making it mandatory for all students?
All students will be taking the freshman seminar.
I think that's a great thing. For the individual arts assessment pathway, we're only adding point 2, so we're adding 1 class.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, are we just kind of making this a pilot to see what the student interest is, to see how it works, and then we will address it more in the future if it takes off?
Exactly right.
When we convert the point 4 of the student support center to the point 4 of the safety, make it a full-time position, converting from a 10-month to an 11-month position, are there budgetary considerations for that?
There are budgetary considerations, and just what the base salaries for a 10-month is not the same as an 11-month, so there is a salary adjustment.
So it's going to be there is a little bit of a budget
Yes.
impact. It's just not a full-time position.
Correct.
the information you presented is excellent. Very thoughtful in terms of this budget. I think the new programs are wonderful. I'm rooting for the garden, the greens. I think that's wonderful, and certainly, you know, the opportunity to learn a little bit about teaching is very appealing. There's nothing that I don't want to hear, and I think again, it's very. Everything's been done very thoughtfully, and it's all very reasonable, and so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I am just the presenter. It is a team effort, and
I'm well aware of that.
very happy with the ideas that people continue to bring forward, and very happy for the support that we have.
Yeah. You like high school all over again?
I know.
Yeah, that's so many opportunities, so many wonderful opportunities.
And I think, you know, this is just we've been talking about this as an administrative team, like we always want Shaker High School to be ahead of the curve. So we know it's going to be a few years before the Blue Ribbon Commission really says, okay, now you have to enact this. But the different things we can try, a new music course, a new Shaker Garden course, a new freshman seminar, that we start to build kind of that program and that kind of thinking, because we know based on the blueprint that they put out, they're going to ask us to offer very different kinds of courses than what we've traditionally offered. And there'll still be the traditional offerings, but they're going to ask us to expand. So the more we can start, even a seed here, a seed that, no pun intended, that was not intentional, but I like it. A seed here, a seed there. I think that just best prepares us to be able to say, when the state's ready, like we've already started thinking about that and stretching our thinking.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience tonight? Yes, sure.
So I have two. The first one is in regards to the individual arts assessment pathway. In regards to the course, I think it's a great idea. But this may be a question more directed to Ms. Q, so
Well,
please let me
she's
know.
here, and she's very happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
So, as Ms. Q knows, and the board may not know, there is currently a music technology course which addresses many of the things that it sounds like this course is offering. Are you just changing the name of the course, or is this going to be a completely new curriculum?
No, a new curriculum, and thank you for asking. So music technology is, honestly, it's what my son does for a living. He's a sound engineer in New York. And so he's behind the soundboard. He's managing, he's editing for live or recorded music. He's doing all that type of work. The songwriting/guitar course is meant to be performance-based. So it's meant to be perhaps reading tab on a guitar chart, reading a lead sheet, and being able to attach language, lyrics to original content, whether it's stolen from poetry or stolen from beats, or there will be a little bit of an implementation of music tech into that. But really, the incorporation of guitar is so that you can have a basic foundation. If you can learn 4 chords, you can get through half of pop music. So basically, just to be able to get some creative input, largely without technology, but a little bit of help.
Okay, thank you.
So Troy, just in case people at home could not hear Mrs. Gio, so Troy's question was whether this was actually just a different name to a current music technology offering, and it's not. It's going to be an additional offering. So showing more electives, if you will, in music and different ways that you can experience music.
Yes, thank you. So my second one is in regards to the Shaker Garden Coordinator one. Obviously, another great thing with the grant. I was just wondering, you mentioned building these new gardens in the other schools. This is kind of like a two-part question, I guess. How are we funding that, and could we use some of that grant money to fund the building of these new gardens, or to make the current gardens better, rather than just giving a teacher like an extra $100? We can put that $100, I'm just using that offhand, back into the gardens to make it better for the students overall.
Great question, Troy. So Troy's question was, if we are going to expand gardens, how do we fund those? Because those don't, come with no cost attached. So, for example, the Latham Ridge one, there was a lot of donation for that, and that's a lot of those community partnerships that will continue to get developed. The one that is currently happening at in in planning stages, I will say, at Loudonville. The Loudonville PTA has generously donated toward that, as well as with these donations. So that's also the work of the coordinator, to bring more people in from the community to help support these programs. Great question. Thank you. Anything online? Okay. So nothing online. Shall I go on?
Yes.
Okay, so the first couple slides you're going to see, you are going to think you're in the world of redundancy, but remember that this would typically be a separate meeting where we have to go through the schedules. So for example, when I show you the Schedule A for staffing, you are going to say, didn't you just show us that 3 slides ago? Yes, I did, but typically this would be a week later. So this is just a summary of all the staffing that we went through, just broken down a little bit differently by department, not by level, and it's not broken down by whether it was enrollment or new program. This is the sum total of staffing. Schedule B is equipment, so this is the equipment budget that was gone over previously. So this shows last year's budgeting for equipment and this year's budgeting for equipment. So you can see we're actually decreasing our equipment budget from last year over $100,000. So we have a lot in technology, as we always do, but not as much as in the past. And we have more in facilities as we continue to develop our facilities. Schedule C, these are our maintenance projects that we're going over in one of our earlier presentations. So this is the sum total of what we will be spending on our kind of routine, if you will, maintenance projects as we go through window blind replacements, playground surfaces, parking lots, boiler upgrades. These are all the things that we continuously do, just like you do in your own house, where you have the routine projects that you have to do to keep your house in good shape. All of this helps us not have bigger costs because of problems later. Now we're going to go to interfund transfers, and I'm going to have Mrs. Howard, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, join me up here. Because I like to explain the words, and she likes to explain the numbers.
So we touched on the interfund transfers a little bit at the last meeting, and just wanted to confirm what these numbers are being projected at for the 24-25 school year. Thanks to the community eligibility program, all students in the North Colony School District get free breakfast and lunch every day. So we've reduced that transfer to school lunch fund appropriation line to $50,000, which really just funds negative account balances that may occur. So it'll take us a year to really see if that's still occurring at all, but still keeping a little bit of money in that line. We are running an extended school year program similar to what we did in the past. So that is funded about 80% from the state. So we do need to appropriate about a 20% cost to that line. And some of that planning is already happening. The transfer to capital fund will have an appropriation of about $7 million. And there are two expense lines in there, if you will. The transfer to capital project that we've been discussing is projected to cost $5.7 million and has no tax impact to the community. We want to reiterate that and focus on that because it is being completely funded by the capital reserve that the board created several years ago. So that is money that we have already in savings. So much like homeowners in the community make upgrades and maintain their homes and their properties, that's exactly what we'll be doing with this project. And it will also be a kickstart to what we hope will be a successful capital project that will be approved, may be approved and come online down the road. But this is work that we can get started on a little quicker. And we're also really proud that a lot of the work can be completed by our North Colony maintenance and operations staff. We are purchasing 8 buses next year. 6 of them are diesel because we can still purchase diesel buses for a time period. And we are taking some steps towards the electrification of the entire bus fleet. We have 70 buses to transition to EV. We're purchasing 2 EVs next year, 2 30-passenger EV buses. So the total cost is about $1.3 million. That expense is also reflected in the transfer to capital line. We are really excited that we did receive a NYSERDA rebate of $342,000 toward that cost, so that reduces that expense line proportionately. So the total interfund transfers of those three categories is about $7.3 million for next year. And we'll take a look one more time at the scope of work that will be included in the transfer to capital project, which again has no tax impact to the community because it will be funded by capital reserve dollars that are already on hand. And you'll see as we summarize the budget in a few more slides, we do separate that project out so the community and the board can truly see what the tax impact is of the increases for this year's budget. So there are a number of projects that will happen across the district, not just at the high school, but in other buildings. And we are looking to get a head start on some of the renovation of the single occupancy bathrooms in the high school and some additional work that we've kind of been maintaining a list of things to do, if you will, in the school district.
So again, yes, so since this would have been a week later, so this is just a reminder of what our new programs and initiatives. So we have the freshman seminar, we have the Take a Look at Teaching course, we have a new athletic training program, we have individual arts and assessment pathway. Something I didn't mention, so I'm gonna actually change something. With the athletic training too, that is also a field that kids are very much interested in. So one of the thoughts we have, it won't be in year one, but that could also be a place, because the person is a certified athletic trainer, where they could actually do a course to work with kids. So when we think about those different pathways, to teach them about athletic training as a profession. So I should have said that earlier. The individual arts assessment pathway, the director of health and safety, which is again the repurposing of a current position, and the Shaker Garden coordinator, which would be contingent upon that grant, are receiving that grant. This is Howard's slides. I'm going to let her. She did a great job on this, and so I'm going to let her share and kind of listen back.
So, as the board and the community are aware, school districts receive their revenues from two major sources: real property taxes and state aid. So we are here tonight to present a total proposed budget of $154,092,414. Keeping in mind that $5.7 million of that is coming from the capital reserve. So there is no tax impact to the community for the work that will be completed with that project. And we are projecting a 2.5% tax levy increase, which is well below what we truly have the authorization to tax according to the tax cap. We'll go over that in a slide or two. Our state aid is up, as we've discussed this budget cycle, $46.8 million, roughly about 30% of our revenue budget. And then we are projecting about $5.2 million in additional revenues. And there are some examples listed on the slide: tuition paid by other schools, admissions and rental of the facilities, pilot payments, which I'll show you in another slide, some refunds that come to the district, billing from other school districts, and CPSE and PPS billing, Medicaid billing, and then interest earned on investments. So Superintendent Skeels has been very clear since the beginning of this budget cycle that we need to focus our requests on programs that are needed at the district, but that are also enrollment driven. So we're presenting a budget to you that I feel is very sustainable in terms of moving forward. And I think that is shown by the fact that we are only looking to appropriate about $721,000 of fund balance in this budget. So in a year where we're adding some positions, sometimes you see school districts appropriate millions of dollars, and it doesn't give the sense that maybe those positions are sustainable. So we feel really good about that this year. Again, just highlighting that the $5.7 million is coming from the capital reserve, which we already have on hand. property tax levy. Again, we are looking at a proposed 2.5% tax levy increase, keeping in mind that that's not necessarily what your taxes may go up by. So what your taxes go up by is largely influenced by the tax roll that is not certified until the 1st of July, and then that equalization rate is applied. So we do not have that information yet, and of course I'll bring that to you once that's more clear. But that is largely indicative of where our tax increases will end up. We are seeing an increase in those pilot payments for next year, the payments in lieu of taxes. There is another pilot payment coming on our books. So that is money that is paid directly to the school district, but in the tax cap formula, it's actually subtracted. So we can't double dip there with that revenue. And then we've looked at the state aid numbers over the course of the last month or so. I think the area of BOCE's aid is conservative. We are making some additional purchases this year of instructional technology equipment, which will bring up that aid number for next year. But we are certainly pleased that the foundation aid number increased this year. Again, that is enrollment driven. However, that proposed change to the funding formula is still sitting out there. And we're hoping that we do get that additional $430,000 that we should receive if the formula was applied according to the law. If we do, then we will not need to use any fund balance to balance the budget. So that's really the goal. These are some of the biggest areas of expense for the budget for next year. And of course, we always talk about how we are in the business of serving people, and we are the biggest employer, right, in the town of Colony. So the biggest aspect of our budget are salaries and benefits. We are experiencing some areas of savings this year, which helped to balance the budget when we were discussing adding positions. There are some retirements as well, so we experienced some breakage there in terms of salaries and benefits, and then in some utility areas, some retirement areas with some rate changes. So that did help. This is a review of the property tax cap formula, and as you are aware, it's essentially broken up into two parts. The top of the formula gives you your levy limit, where we came to that number that is about midway on the screen, the $95.3 million number. That number and above reflects data from what's now considered the prior year, talking about this year as the prior year when building next year's budget. And then we move to adding current year information. So you see where the pilot payments for next year are subtracted. We would have the ability to add prior year carryover, which is money that we did not tax last year that we could have. So school districts are allowed to use it in one subsequent year or lose it. There is a small exclusion for the ERS retirement expense, and then the capital exclusions of $1.4 million reflect the difference between debt service and building aid that we are paying, and then also the capital expense of those bus purchases. So our tax levy limit this year is at 3.61%, but because of the careful planning that our team has done, we are proposing a levy limit of 2.5%, which is well below what we are allowed to tax. This is a summary of what we are proposing for a budget for the 24-25 school year. You can see across the chart at the top that we show last year's budget amount, this year's budget amount, the current year, $146,986,870. And that budget to budget change is 4.83%. That $7.1 million budget to budget difference, remember, includes that transfer to capital project, that $5.7 million capital project. So we wanted to show on this slide that even though the budget to budget overall change is 4.83%, we are only proposing a levy to levy limit change of 2.5%, which only utilizes $721,000 of fund balance. But if you look a little bit lower on the slide, if we exclude the transfer to capital project, the budget to budget change is just under 1%, for an increase of approximately $4 million. There is no tax impact to the community for the work that will be completed with the transfer to capital project.
You can always tell when it's my slide because it just has words. Everybody knows that's my slide. So this is just another version of what Sybil just went through, but I want to say it really has been a team effort to work through and plan through this process. You know, we talk about our 3 pillars, but you know, our foundation is always about providing excellence while being fiscally responsible. And we believe this is a very fiscally responsible budget to put forward to our community. So as Sybil just said, we last year's budget was $146 million. This year's budget is $148 million. The increase, if you don't include the transfer to capital, and for those of us who don't live in the business office and don't use phrases like transfer to capital, the reason we're excluding it is that is the transfer to capital is our capital reserve, it's our savings account. All we're doing is taking money out of an account we already have. So that money, that $5 million is just sitting in an account waiting to be used. We've shown you the projects we're going to use it at. So the actual budget to budget increase, as Sybil just said, is 0.95%. So in a time when we're talking about inflation, in a time where we're talking about costs becoming more expensive, and in a way where we are adding positions, we are adding interesting programs for kids, we're only actually increasing the budget by less than 1% from last year. So we're very proud of that fact. And again, we're proud that although we could go up to our tax cap of 3.61, because we know we also have a capital project and we are asking a lot of our community, so we're only going out at 2.5%. Now, remember that will get finalized, as Sybil said, in August after we get the growth factor. So usually the impact is a little bit less than what we project once we get the growth factor. We do still have growth, as you know when you drive around the town of Colony, you know we still have growth. And so we are very proud of this budget and very happy for what it represents for our students and their families. Our next actual budget meeting won't be until May 8th, which will be the public hearing on the budget, which will be just a sum total of the budget for anybody to come out. If they haven't been paying attention, they can hear about it then. And then on May 21st, we will have our annual election for Board of Education, as well as our budget vote, as well as our capital project vote. That will be at our Goodrich Central Office building. That will be from 6 a.m. for you early risers to 9 p.m. And so do we have any questions on the revenues, tax cap, or anything we just presented?
Thank you very much. How about from our community? Any questions? Ms. Fields, thank you very much. Do we
Thank
have
you
any,
very much.
DJ online?
There are no online questions.
No online questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We do know that budget development is a team effort, and I know that we have a great team. Again, an outstanding budget, and we all can be proud of this budget. And we thank you. This is your first budget season with us, and a job well done, by the way. Yes, job well done. And Mrs. Garner, thank you for your budget work once again. All right, I'd like a motion to approve the proposed budget for 24-25. Mrs. Nardilillo.
I move to approve the proposed budget for the 24-25 school year as recommended by the Budget Committee.
And a second, Mr. Cannon. Are there any questions or comments? I think not. All in favor? Thank you. I'd like a motion to approve the 2024-25 property tax report. Thanks, Mr. Johnson.
I move to approve the 2024-25 property tax report card as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thank you. And a second, Dr. Vino. And any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. And I'd like a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Grinnell,
Move to adjourn.
and a second, Mr. Shavo, and all in favor? Thank you very much, and thank you all for